The first BMF title was held between Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. In that fight, Masvidal won the belt by defeating Diaz early. He then ended his career and retired. Now the vacant BMF title will be held by two of the best lightweight punchers in the world. Hello fighters. This is World of MMA channel. In today's video I will give a prediction for the rematch between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, which will take place at UFC 291. But before the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like, so you won't miss the next videos. Here we go. Justin Gaethje is a unique fighter with the nickname, Highlight. 11 fights in the world's premier promotion and 11 bonuses at once. Before meeting Khabib Nurmagomedov, each appearance in the octagon guaranteed Justin $50,000, and twice he received double bonuses, both for the fight of the evening and for the performance. Even in fights that he lost to Alvarez and Poirier he received bonuses, and those fights were nominated for Fight of the Year. Signed by the UFC with a record of 17-0 and as a serious rising star, he received immediately as an opponent the number 5 lightweight Michael Johnson. Moreover, Justin's debut was the highlight of the tournament. Looking ahead, only 3 times out of his 11 fights in Dana White's promotion, Highlight didn't top the tournament. A bright win was followed by those 2 losses, to Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, but both fighters went to the hospital after their fights. The 2 losses changed Gaethje's approach. He went from being a spectacle-obsessed fighter to a more calculated fighter. And a lot of credit goes to Highlight head coach Trevor Wittman. In the next 3 fights, he was 1 round away from knocking out his opponents. James Vick, Edson Barboza and Donald Cerrone were unable to counter anything against the updated version of Gaethje. Justin has long been well known to mixed martial arts fans, but his worldwide fame came to him in May 2020 because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Khabib-Ferguson fight was once again derailed, and it was Highlight who came out to replace Nurmagomedov. If the first 2 rounds came out as competitors, then things changed in the octagon. Justin was just destroying Tony, who had a streak of 12 wins under his belt, and in the 5th round he achieved a triumph. And not just any fight, it looked like he broke Ferguson's will. The way El Chuchuy had never been seen before, running away, escaping Gaethje's punches, and Herb Dean was forced to stop the beating. After winning the interim lightweight title, Highlight immediately dropped his belt. "I'll wait for the real thing," was Justin's explanation for his action. He waited. That fall in Abu Dhabi that year, Highlight faced the champion, but Khabib ran him over, choking him out early in the 2nd round. Gaethje took a break for a year and returned in a fight against Michael Chandler. There's no point in describing what happened in New York, because it was the best fight of 2021, and Highlight won for the first time in the UFC by decision. Then in the title fight he lost by choke to Charles Oliveira, but got back on the winning track with a win over prospect Rafael Fiziev. Dustin is an experienced fighter, 28 fights in the UFC, that number says it all. If many fighters are given the nickname Bad Boy, then Dustin was like that all his childhood. He never graduated from high school, preferring to fight everyone who challenged him. He even spent time in juvenile detention. All of this is hard to reconcile with the current Poirier, who spends a lot of time on charity. It was MMA that turned the young bully into an athlete with a big heart. Dustin always liked Van Damme movies and tried different sports: boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, which eventually led him to mixed martial arts in 2009. It took a little over a year for Diamond to rack up a 7-0 record and earn an invitation to the WEC. But this California promotion was in its last days and Dustin had only 2 fights there, in the first of which he suffered the first defeat of his career. That's how he ended up in the UFC. 11 fights at featherweight, 8 wins, one of which stands out. Poirier was the first and only one so far to finish Max Holloway. But there were losses, too, to Cub Swanson, the Korean Zombie, in a crazy fight, for which the fighters received a Fight of the Night bonus, and later many publications called that fight the best fight of 2012. And from McGregor, After losing to the Irishman, Dustin made the decision to change his weight class to lightweight. The transition went well for him. 9 fights. 1 loss to skilled puncher Michael Johnson, who was at his peak at the time. 1 more fight was ruled a failure due to illegal punching of Alvarez. In the rematch, though, Poirier spectacularly knocked out Eddie, and before that knocked out Pettis and Gaethje. This series put Diamond in a fight for the interim title while Khabib was serving his disqualification. The opponent was the familiar Holloway, who of course wanted to take not only the belt, but also a rematch for his only early loss. If you saw the Blessed One fight against Qatar at the beginning of last year, you can imagine what Max could do in 25 minutes. He did, but Poirier was able to get the upper hand in that war and the right to fight Nurmagomedov. But like Khabib's other opponents, after the fight Dustin only added 1 in the loss column. After that he went for surgery and took the biggest break of his career. He came back in the summer of 2020 and again in a great fight, one of the best of that year, against Dan Hooker he won. Recovered from the considerable damage that the New Zealander had inflicted on him, Poirier wanted a new challenge. And he did, in a rematch against Conor McGregor, in January 2021. Another. McGregor's return. And again he was very nice to Dustin Poirier, only occasionally reminding him that their last meeting was not too quick, and that the Irishman would like to improve this achievement. But in the end he suffered his first defeat by knockout. 6 months later, Conor changed tactics and Dustin gave up a title shot and opted for a trilogy. In the summer Poirier and McGregor met for the 3rd time and again Dustin surprised the world by winning by TKO. Now, against the Irishman, he put a point, or maybe a dotted line, and got the fight for the belt. But Oliveira defended his title quite easily. Then he got back on the winning track by choking Michael Chandler in the 3rd round in a tough fight. In the stand-up, both fighters are the top strikers in their division. Gaethje, although a basic wrestler, prefers to fight in the stand-up. He has power in his hands. In his last fight against Fiziev, he showed spectacular stand-up fight. Poirier is the best boxer in the UFC. He has beaten many top punchers such as Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor and Max Holloway. In that aspect, I think the slight favorite will be Dustin Poirier. And in terms of wrestling output equality, as both fighters do not use wrestling in their fights and it is unlikely to be necessary. I think Dustin Poirier will win this fight by knockout. Just like in the first fight he will work for distance and outbox Gaethje. The most important thing is to defend against low kicks. What do you guys think? Write your opinions in the comments. Bye everybody.